The previous 3 videos in the playlist used the memory aid BODMAS to assist in performing calculations. There are many other examples of memory aids that assist with the same process of performing calculations in mathematics to ensure that the correct order of operations take place. So, for example, you do division before addition and so on. The one we've looked at previously, as we've already mentioned, is BODMAS, where the B stands for brackets, the O stands for of, so when you say things like 2 to the power of 3, we know we're dealing with powers. Then there's division, then there's multiplication, addition and subtraction. A variation on the memory aid BODMAS is BIDMAS. This is where the O of BODMAS is replaced with the I, where I means index. So you can have 2 to the power of 3, and 3 would be the index. So it's something else just to remind you that you're dealing with powers here, the raising of a number to a particular power. Where another word for that power is index. Another variation on the memory aid is BEDMAS, and this is where we actually have E in this position to represent exponents. So again, we're talking about powers, and powers come after brackets and so on, as we've looked at in all of the previous videos. Another variation on the memory aid is this one here, PEDMAS, and this is where the B that we've looked at in previous memory aids is being replaced by the P, and this stands for parenthesis, which is another word for brackets. Regardless as to the memory aid you use, what is important is that you perform the operations of a calculation in the correct order. And the truth of the matter is, once you get used to doing the calculations in the correct order, the memory aids become less important. But in the meantime, go with one of the memory aids that's listed here. I've always used BODMAS because that's what I used first, so it's always stayed with me. And the differences and the variations depend upon what country you live in, what part of the country you live in, and who taught you in the first instance about the order of operations when you're performing calculations. The rest of the video is actually going to look at these 2 examples here, these 2 expressions, and we're going to evaluate them, making sure we do the operations in the correct order. And I've left up the word BODMAS so we can refer to it. But of course you could use any of the memory aids that you've already seen in this video, or some of your own that your teachers may have taught you. The first thing we do, we work on the brackets that contains 2 plus 3, which we get 5. Then we square that, then we multiply that by the square root of 25, and then we divide the lot by the cube root of 125. Of course, 5 squared is 25, then we multiply by the square root of 25, which is 5, and we divide by the cube root of 125, which is 5. We then perform the division, so we cancel the 5 with the 25, and then 5 times 5 is 25 over 1, which gives us 25, as you can see. Now, of course, I did the division before the multiplication because I was following the rules as laid down by the memory aid BODMAS, where you do the division before the multiplication. But in this particular case, it wouldn't have mattered which way I'd have done it. So let's do the last step again. So here we can see the last step again, 25 times 5, all divided by 5. But I'm going to do the multiplication first. So that's 125 divided by 5, which then gives me 25. So you can see the answers are the same. And on this occasion, I did the multiplication before the division. So I didn't actually follow the steps as recommended by the memory aid BODMAS. I did the multiplication before I did the division. Now, of course, common sense tells you when this kind of thing can apply. So again, these memory aids are precisely that. They give you a nudge as to what you should be doing next. But you can see here, it didn't matter whether I did the division or the multiplication first. I got the correct answer. And of course, I've actually done this step by step. In truth, with the example you can see here, I'd have most probably done it in fewer steps, but I wanted to demonstrate exactly what was happening. Now, of course, you don't have to write out each individual step as I've been doing in this particular video. For example, you could just simply do this. You can say, well, the 2 plus 3 is 5 squared. Multiply that by the square root of 25 is 5. And then divide that by the cube root of 125, which is 5. And then, of course, you can cancel by doing the division, and you end up with 5 squared times 1. And obviously 5 squared is 25, times 1 is 25 divided by the 1, you end up with 25. So I haven't shown all the individual steps. But again, this kind of thing comes with simply experience. And using BODMAS, frankly, I never use it any longer. I just know what calculation needs to be done next. Now this example has got inner brackets, as we can see, so I'm going to work on that first. So the square root of 9 is 3, minus 1, we put the squared back, plus the cubed root of 27 is simply reproduced here, and then we close the brackets and square the lot. Now obviously 3 minus 1 is 2, that's squared, plus then we have the cube root of 27, and of course we then square the lot, and then we go and we have 2 squared is 4, plus, and the cubed root of 27 is 3, all that squared, and 4 plus 3 is 7. We square that to give us 49. Now, of course, I've done that step by step, and I've wrote things down, frankly, too many times, but I was wanting to demonstrate the order in which these calculations should be done. This can be done in far fewer steps, as I'll demonstrate next. Let's work on this one again. We'll start with the open brackets. Now we'll work on the inner brackets. So the square root of 9 is 3, minus the 1. All of that is then squared, plus, and of course the cube root of 27 is 3, and then we close the brackets and all of it's squared. Now 3 minus 1 is 2, squared is 4, so I write 4 there, plus 3, and then of course we'll square the lot. And of course 4 plus 3 is 7, and 7 squared is 49. So you see I skipped out some of the actual steps in the sense that I didn't write them down, but of course I was doing them in my head. And you can actually do this a lot quicker by cutting out quite a few more steps. And the more practice you have of doing these, the quicker you can do it and the more of them you can do in your head. Now, of course, I can hear many of you out there saying, well, I'll use a calculator to do these. Well, that's fine. Go ahead and use a calculator. But if you rely on a calculator, you must make sure that your number you get at the end is in the ballpark of what it should be, because it's quite easy to make keystroke mistakes on calculators. So my recommendation is not to rely too heavily on calculators, to learn these techniques, to learn the order of operations, because you should never trust calculators. You can trust them to be right, but you can't trust yourself to type in the brackets in the right place and so on. So just be careful. Make sure you practice these kind of examples that you've seen in the last 4 videos. And obviously go to other textbooks and have a go at doing some examples where the answers are in the back for you to have a look to check that you're doing this correctly. But I strongly recommend don't get over-reliant on calculators when you're doing these types of calculations. Check out the supporting website for these videos, and also consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and get an automatic update every time I upload a new video. Also consider subscribing to the Google Plus Circle that relates to these videos.